Welcome back to Thompson's Coins, where today we'll have a look at some of the things that came through the shop this week. This week, seemingly like all other weeks, has been very interesting and exciting here in the shop. I've had some really cool things come through, and today we're taking a look at something from the Royal Australian Mint, the Reserve Bank of Australia, and Canada. We'll start off with the Holden Heritage tin set. So this sort of marked the beginning of what became a bit of a mania for a lot of 50-cent collectors. They did the Holden Heritage tin set first. This was a 12-coin set, 11 of which were coloured, and one of which we have on the top here, the Holden Heritage 50-cent coin, was not coloured. Now, they made 7,500 of these tins, which unsurprisingly was not nearly enough to meet demand. And like I mentioned earlier, it began a really popular time for 50-cent coin collectors. They followed up with a Ford tin set, and they then went on to do a supercars set, and they did some smaller and varied different tin sets. They also did the Qantas box set. So it was an interesting period where there were a number of these interesting and, dare I say, innovative methods of displaying coins that were being produced by the Royal Australian Mint. And this set, it was an example sort of similar to the planetary set that I highlighted in a previous video, in the sense that it had this huge run-up and collectors were just going crazy trying to get their hands on these sets, and the prices were getting well up over $1,000 consistently. And since then, it's come back significantly to what I would describe as a more reasonable, stable level. So over the past couple of months, it's sort of leveled out and is a bit more reasonable. And just on that in general as well, it seems to be the market has leveled out quite a lot on a lot of these coins that have previously had crazy prices, and some people are a little upset and they come into the shop, and I obviously have conversations regularly with collectors, and some of them have been a little disheartened by recent, price movements on some of sets like these and just historically popular coins. When I say historically, I'm referring to the past, 5 to 10 years. And I often look at that, and like anything, like any market with ups and downs, I think it's a healthy reflection of what collectors are currently looking for. And sets like these are a good example of something that's always been popular, is still going to be valuable even in a market where things have leveled off a bit. And I think when we look at the broader state of the world, or Australia in particular, there are a lot of collectors out there who do collect just as a hobby with what you would describe as some extra money, which they may no longer have at this current state in time. So as a result, you see some of these things start to level out a little bit, and then I view that as a great opportunity for collectors as well. So if there are sets that have previously been unattainable for you, the prices have just been eye-watering and unaffordable, and if you're sensible about it and you manage yourself correctly, you can pick up some really interesting sets that would otherwise not have been, within your budget. So, there's pluses and minuses to any market, and at the moment, it seems to be a great opportunity for a lot of collectors, in my opinion, to get their hands on things that, otherwise were a little out of reach. And so, this is one such example, and I think I quite like the older style that they've gone for with this tin. I like that there's lots of references to the, obviously the Holden story on the back there, but just the imagery and general style of it, it kind of has that, as you'd hope for, a heritage look to it. And there's story cards with all of the individual coins on there as well, which I think makes for a really nice presentation. And things like these, again, I think it goes a little beyond the conventional collector. I remember when these were first released, a lot of people were getting them for things like Father's Day presents, and I would go out on a limb and suggest that a number of these are on display in people's workshops, garages, and things like that. And so a lot of collectors, even now, won't be able to get their hands on them because they're not in the hands of collectors per se. That is to say, not coin collectors. They could be, old car collectors and just people that have an interest in Holden as a company. So products like this, I think, are quite interesting in that sense. And this set, of course, was released in 2016. Taking a turn into one of my favorite areas, banknotes, I have here an intact bundle of $1 notes from 1969. Now these have the Phillips and Randall signature combination, which is how we identify the year that the notes were produced. Having an intact bundle of 100 notes is impressive pretty much at any time, no matter what the denomination, in my opinion. You often see the 1982 bundles of 100 out there on the market, which makes sense because this was the last run of dollar notes prior to the introduction of the $1 coin in 1984. So it's one of those areas where, sort of like the 1927 Canberra florin or the 1988 $5 coin, anything that is released and people, collectively, a lot of people think that it will be a good thing to hold on to. As a result, everyone has them. So they're not particularly rare because everyone had the same bright idea. But in 1969, holding on to $100 in $1 notes was not a common thing. This is the first bundle I've ever seen of 1969 $1 notes. You've got to bear in mind that for this to exist, they weren't spent, they weren't circulated, and the fact that they're still intact with the Reserve Bank of Australia band around them is incredibly rare, and I think very interesting. The type of thing that, for any banknote enthusiasts, something like that represents a very interesting piece of history, and being in this sort of condition, the top note, which is not uncommon on a bundle of 100, has a teleflick. So a teleflick is a light bend in the note, which you often see when a bundle is being checked or something like that. The top note would be lifted, and as a result, you see the remnants of that fold there. But other than that, all of the notes are uncirculated and in their numerical order, which I think is incredibly cool and very historically significant because it's very unusual. You know, bundles, like I said earlier, bundles are unusual no matter what, unless you're going directly to the Reserve Bank or collecting them directly from your bank. But having something from 1969 still intact with the original band, the notes, and this is another thing, when people talk about consecutive notes being more valuable, I have to explain to people that if it's a common note from the outset, having them in order doesn't really make any difference. You can have a really common 1982 Johnston & Stone $1 note, you've got 5 in a row. That's lovely, but you know, they were issued in bundles of 100, and this is at a time when most people were putting them aside because they had the idea that, you know, being among the last dollar notes ever produced, that they could potentially go up in value in the future. Notes that are intact and uncirculated from 1969, just by themselves, retail at about $60. To then have a bundle of 100 intact like this, it's quite exciting and very interesting. But I also appreciate that when you're talking about a full bundle, it is a smaller market of collectors that are actively looking for something like this. And as a result, I feel I've priced it accordingly. So that will also, all of the things that we're looking at today, if you're watching the video later down the track, you know, a couple of weeks after release, they may not be available, so I'm sorry about that, but everything currently will be up and available in the new releases section on the website, so there'll be a little link in the description. But to cap things off, I've got a really cool bit of history as well, with a bit of a tidbit that you may not have known about these sets. So the final thing we'll look at today is the 1976 Canadian Olympic sets. Now, what you may not know about these sets, even if you've seen them before, is these were actually issued as a fundraising effort from the Canadian government to fund the games. Now, they successfully raised, I think it was somewhere in the order of about $260 million. So it was a big success on that front, but overall they still ended up in significant debt, and it took them a couple of decades to square that away, unfortunately. But as a result, we're left with these interesting sets. They are, I think it's 4.33 ounces of silver. They're sterling silver sets, which means that they're 92.5% pure, and when you boil it down, it's 4.33 ounces of pure silver per set. Now you have 2 $5 coins as well as 2 $10 coins, and they depict a range of different sports and themes on them. These sets were issued in the early 70s. I think they were from 1972 or 3 right up until 1976 as a promotional thing for the games, and as I mentioned earlier, they were really popular, and there are a number of different sets out there. What I'm doing with these sets is I think I'm pricing them at about, I think I worked it out, it's around about $10 above the melt value of the coins. So they're not particularly expensive. A number of them do have impairments, so they'll have some toning or just, general signs of wear and tear over the years. So it's more something interesting and a piece of Canadian history that you can add to your collection, but not the type of thing that, in my opinion, has the potential to, go gangbusters in value in the future. That's not unless silver goes crazy, which, who knows? There's all sorts of theories and opinions out there on the market at the moment. But I thought I'd just give you a look at those, because every time I see them, I smile and think about what an innovative fundraising activity that was for the Canadian government, and I quite like the presentation on them as well. They come in a nice timber box with that sort of leather lid. There is one variation as well. It's a red one, and the packaging is not quite as nice. It's that standard sort of clamshell packaging, but like I said, it's relatively cheap silver, all things considered, and an interesting piece of Olympic history. So there you go, you've seen a tin of coins, a bundle of notes, and some fundraising boxes of silver coins. I hope you enjoyed this highlight this week. If you are interested in the greatest hobby in the world, coin collecting, you can come visit us here. We're at Shop 8 in the Boronia Mall, which is 50 Dorset Square in Boronia. We're open Tuesday to Thursday, 10 till 4, and Saturdays from 10 till 3. Also, consider subscribing to the channel. Let me know in the comments which of the items highlighted today was your favorite, and if you've ever seen an old bundle of notes like this, because, it's not something you see every day. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you soon.